Today we're looking at risk from a different angle. Risk isn't just an OSHA violation that might happen, so let's also hear from three experts on areas that they follow and how they define and prepare for risk. First, we have Kevin Fitzgerald with 2 decades of supply chain experience and recent work with our disaster response team. Kevin, we're looking forward to hearing from you. How are you doing today?
Great, Kurt. Thank you very much for having me.
Next, we're joined by Brooke Applequist, an EHS and Sustainability Manager. Brooke, thanks for being here.
Yeah, happy to join.
Finally, Fastenal's SVP of Operations, Tony Broersma, is here as well. Tony, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Kirk.
Well, let's start with the simple question of how you define risk in your area. Kevin, why don't you kick things off?
Sure. I think if I had to define risk, I'd probably do that through the lens of disaster preparedness, right? And so you can think about a natural disaster or, the most recent pandemic. It's really about identifying the things that you need to keep your organization or operation going, right? Whatever that might be. And risk really exists if there's disruption to that, right? So if you think about workers on a line or workers on a job site or wherever the case might be, and they're using N95 masks. Well, we just had a major disruption a few years ago to N95 masks when the pandemic hit, and that's happened in the past. That's not new. So it's all about identifying the things that you need to keep your operation up and running. And if there's going to be disruption to that, you need to have a plan around that risk.
Fair enough. Tony, how about you? What do you think risk is?
So very similar to Kevin, and my head just goes, having spent so much time on the supply chain side and having gone through all of these fun challenges that the world has thrown at us for the last couple of years, of starting to frame out the ways that we prepare for different types of risks. So it kind of categorizes the risks into the what of the product that we're going to need, the when of the product that our customers are going to need, and then exactly how much. So we deal with risk in forecasting quantities, in timing, and challenges to the supply chain going backwards, as well as making sure that it's good quality product and we know where it's coming from and all the ESG challenges that come with that.
Okay, so Brooke, from a sustainability point of view, how would you define risk?
Sure. So when I think of risk and risk to the business, I just think of all the environmental health and safety and sustainability programs that we have put together and implemented over the years. And if we hadn't done that, it would have brought risk to us as a business and potentially losing customers. And I can get more into that as well, as far as how customers are looking at our safety performance and our sustainability performance today.
So that's 3 different ways of defining risks that aren't overly traditional. So let's switch to dealing with those risks. Kevin, you oversaw Fastenal's Blue Team Response program during a pandemic. Not a lot of people can say that, by the way. Were there lessons about risk that you learned there? What pointers can we really take away from that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think anybody was extremely prepared for what happened with the pandemic, right? I mean, we saw that across many different areas, across many different products. I mean, it started with safety, and then it turned into toilet paper, and it got hand sanitizer. I mean, you name it. It was just, there was a lot of supply chain disruption during that time. But I think when I look back at Fastenal's response to the pandemic, it was about building a plan, right? Like having an actual team that's involved with identifying risk, and then having the authority to make some decisions based off of that plan. The other thing we did was we had options, right? So we almost had like a good, better, or best line of approval options for specific product, right? So if we couldn't get something, well, then maybe there was another supplier that had the same form, fit, and function, the same quality. Well, let's go that route. One of the third things I think that is important during all of this is to take action, right? Like you can prepare, you can talk about things, you can build a plan, but actually take action, do something, react, make some changes if it means moving product, if it means moving suppliers, whatever the case might be. But I think the biggest lesson we learned back during 2020 and 2021 is communication, especially internal communication amongst all the different departments within Fastenal, and also to our customers. it was the most important part of mitigating risk. It was the most important part of communicating that risk, and it was about doing it before, during, and actually after the disruption as well. Because we learned a lot, and the more we communicated after the disruption, the better we will be the next time we have to prepare for something like this.
So, Tony, these days supply chains are multinational spider webs, basically. What risks should people be aware of from the compliance side of this equation?
So one of the things that I watched a lot throughout the pandemic and even coming out of the pandemic were the challenges and the strains on supply chain and the pressures that that put on the compliance side of our business. And one thing that I think made us really strong or kept us really strong throughout the pandemic was that we have really good decentralized teams that have very good controls in place that make sure that we make good decisions for ourselves and for our customers. And so, traditionally compliance just meant finding good quality product from a good quality factory, and over a long period of time vetting that factory, getting to know that factory, and approving that factory for specific product mix. We wouldn't go to a factory that was approved to make nuts and bolts and go buy high vis vests or gloves from that factory. Well, as we went into the pandemic and then again coming out of the pandemic, there was a lot of movement in the supply chain where a lot of factories were starting to create new things. A lot of factories were expanding into new capabilities as well as new businesses opening up. And so we had really good teams that put controls in place to make sure that we weren't tempted, as we moved very, very quickly into a decentralized environment, to ever make a bad decision for our company or for our customers. And so we really held that line and made sure that we were buying good quality product from good quality factories, and that we didn't get sucked into any of the risk out there related to some of the major frauds that we've heard out there or the human rights violations that have happened.
Now, Brooke, to me, this feels like a simple question, which probably means it's not. But what is the risk of not switching over light fixtures and air filters right now to something that's a more sustainable option? Is there a risk there, or am I way off base?
Yeah, there's absolutely a risk if we don't move towards more energy efficient lighting, or if we're not maintaining when it comes to equipment. So definitely, if we don't do those things today, we're going to see higher energy costs and more emissions. And something as a company that we do is we report to the CDP, the Carbon Disclosure Project, and some of the things that we like to look at when it comes to sustainability is how we can improve. And one of them is switching out lighting, and especially LED lighting. It'll reduce the amount of energy consumed, which means less emissions, and then also impact cost as well. Same thing with switching out when it comes to filters, especially in HVAC systems. You're going to see improvement there with reduced costs, but also reduce energy consumption as well.
So switching over saves money. I think I can understand that. Okay, simple enough.
Absolutely.
Tony, I'm going to read a great quote from you. I'm sure you're really excited about this. Supply chain is kind of boring until it's not. Basically, you have to be able to adapt. How does Fastenal react quickly, and what makes that speed to action possible?
So I've been with the company for 19 years, and as I've grown with the company, starting the branch side of the business, I really understood that we had a distribution side of the business and a trucking side of the business. Well, then as I've grown with the company, I've learned about all of these other areas where we excel as an organization, and we have these incredibly strong subject matter experts, not only in roles, but also in locations around the world. That's global sourcing teams located all around the world, trade compliance teams, product compliance, international logistics and brokerage, purchasers, domestic trucking and distribution, and then our relationships with our supplier network, as well as our relationships with all of our customers. That's really positioned us well to be on the front lines in all of those different environments, to understand exactly what's going on in the trucking industry, in the brokerage industry, in the international freight industry, in the factories in foreign markets. And we've always been in a really good position as little minute changes happen or disruptions happen in the supply chain in normal times, that each of those teams would be in a decentralized situation, able to pivot, make adjustments very efficiently to allow us to react very well to any challenges that we faced out there. In these last few years, what has really set us apart and what I've really been proud of the team for is there was no single area breaking down. It was just about every area that I described had disruptions. And no single one of those departments or groups could have addressed or fixed the problems in isolation. It really needed to be very dynamic solutions where our teams came together and really understood, where we had purchasers and forecasters coming together, understanding what was going on in our suppliers and our customers, along with what was going on with our lead times in international shipping and domestic freight challenges, putting all those pieces together of the puzzle together to have a dynamic solution and a strategy for how we were going to prepare for what we knew was coming in the next 6 to 9 months and make those changes immediately. So to me, that combination of subject matter experts, decentralized and located around the world, but able to come together as a group and very collaboratively come up with dynamic solutions to what felt like just wildfire problems popping up around the world, really position us well to bring our company and our customers through these challenges in the last few years.
It almost sounds like good people in different locations are able to problem solve at scale.
Yeah, and I've listened to a lot of companies talk about the most important things that they did during the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic, and there was never a silver bullet where they talked about a particular computer program or a particular process or SOP or anything like that. Really, what surfaced over and over again were companies talking about how great their people were, and I'm biased, but I feel like we work for an organization with some of the best people in the world, and really empowered to make great business decisions. So it's absolutely about the people.
Kevin, I've heard you say before that preparation before a natural disaster is absolutely critical. What does that process look like?
I really do believe that. I mean, preparation, when we talk about disasters, when we talk about pandemics, and we talk about risk in supply chain, it really always comes back to preparation. And part of that is having a team of people, having a group that you've built in advance to help the organization, whatever that might look like from a supply chain standpoint, from a logistics standpoint, just help internally the organization with mitigating risk. It might sound kind of silly in certain situations, but practice if needed. And I can give a small example. Usually every summer around the May, June timeframe, we'll get our blue team response group together to kind of walk through a hurricane preparedness. What do we do? Because we know when a hurricane is coming. It's just about making sure everybody is prepared and on the same page with what we need to do. And then the last thing from preparedness is something I mentioned earlier on communication. It is so important to not only communicate before and during the pandemic or any type of disaster. It's also important to go back and look at what went well and what didn't go so well during the entire process, because you're not going to get in front of everything. But if you can learn from every time risk enters your supply chain, anytime there's a disruption, then it's just going to make your entire organization better. It certainly has made Fastenal better.
So as far as preparedness goes, Brooke, I feel like that almost ties into the EHS angle of things. Is there anything that you want to tag onto that?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, with environmental health, safety, and sustainability, it's all about being prepared for whatever may come up, whether it's an OSHA inspection to an emergency preparedness. So that's very much in the world of EHS. But also, I guess just to go back to what I mentioned earlier about how our customers are also looking at our KPIs and safety performance. They're looking at our total recordable injury rates, whether we've had violations within the company, if we've had any environmental citations as well. So it just goes to show that, not only do we care as a company, but our customers have expectations and they care about how we're performing as a company as well. And so oftentimes we have these questionnaires, these surveys. There's also third-party verifier sites that get used to vet our performance as a company as well. So if we weren't to prepare and put programs and procedures in place, I mean, we could risk losing customers, because our customers also find EHS and sustainability important as well.
Well, all, thanks for talking today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.